What is going on, YouTube? Michael here. Today we are going to talk about carbs. So there's a couple of really important things that we need to break down, and I think these things get lost and maybe misunderstood as being a little bit too scary for people to receive and implement into their own diets. So today we're going to make sure that we cover those topics and we can get you on your way to using carbs for weight loss. So the first thing that we are going to talk about is going to be the glycemic index. This is a number that is from 0 to 100. So we're very familiar with scales. From 0 to 100, that rates the time in which your body processes or gets the carbs into your system and turns the carbs into energy through glucose in the bloodstream. So I'm going to try to break this down as easily as I can by using metaphors. Metaphors are very, very good. So think about a car. You have two modes of transportation, okay? You have two-wheel drive or front-wheel drive. You have four-wheel drive. These two modes of drivetrain, if you will, are going to produce two different outcomes. They are necessary, but when used incorrectly, you could be wasting a lot of gas, right? If you're using four-wheel drive on a very flat surface that has no reason, that you have no reason to be using four-wheel drive, you're essentially going to be wasting gas. However, if you're going to be driving two-wheel, front-wheel drive, or rear-wheel drive on a mountain or a hill or in icy conditions, you're going to have a very scary outcome potentially. So carbohydrates, think of them as drivetrains, okay? So low glycemic carbohydrates, they are not going to have as fast of an effect on your blood glucose levels. High glycemic carbohydrates are going to have a very quick effect on your blood glucose levels. So let's talk about these ranges. 0 to 55, that is a low glycemic carbohydrate. 56 to 69 is a mid-range. These have an effect, but not as fast as 70 to 100. 70 to 100 is going to have a very quick glycemic response. So your glycemic index is going to spike that blood glucose. Now, when your blood glucose is elevated, what gets released is a hormone that is called insulin. And insulin is most often thought of as being related to diabetes. All insulin is, or all hormones are messengers, okay? They just tell your body what to do. So it's just like the button that you push, four-wheel drive, okay? That's all that insulin is. Think of insulin as that button that takes you from two-wheel to four-wheel drive. So what we're gonna do when we push that button for four-wheel drive is release insulin. What insulin is going to tell your body to do is store carbohydrates as fat for energy, okay? So when you're in an elevated insulin state, you're not going to be able to burn fat. You're in storage mode. You're taking a lot of that gas. You're essentially, I don't know if this is, tell me if you're a car person, tell me if this is correct. You're flooding that gas line. You're putting a ton of energy into that gas line. When this is important is when we're working out around times of intense activity, because we're going to be using that blood glucose to turn into energy so that we do not burn muscle tissue for energy, so that we're not muscle wasting, okay? So insulin is the button that you push in your car that tells us we're going into four-wheel drive. What this does is it tells your body, store, store, store. Now, when this can be dangerous and when it will cause fat gain is when we're not doing anything, okay? When we're not increasing our activity levels. So you're actually going to store those carbohydrates as fat for later use, okay? So using carbohydrates around high glycemic carbohydrates or mid-range around exercise is going to be a very good way to increase protein synthesis. This is when our body is like, okay, store, 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 use, use, use. But when we're not going to be doing elevated levels of activity, we want to keep that insulin nice and low. This is when low glycemic carbohydrates are good. Why are they good during this time? Well, because we're going to be able to have that slow energy that maintains. So if you've ever heard somebody say, I need something substantial. This is something that my parents would always say when I was younger. You need to eat some substantial foods. These are going to stick with you so that you don't have that crash. Okay? So hopefully this explanation of glycemic index can kind of help you understand the why. Okay? And the when is going to be around exercise or levels of zero activity. So when we're not active, when I'm sitting in my car right now, I'm not going to have the high glycemic carbohydrates. Okay, so I'm going to have something, if I'm not going to be doing anything active, if I'm going to be sitting at my computer or watching Netflix, whatever, I'm going to be wanting to have something that's just a little bit substantial so that I'm not going to crash and fall asleep with zero energy, right? But I'm going to want something that's not going to raise my insulin levels and put me into fight mode, if you will, okay? So that's going to be your win. Now, how? So I'm going to try to explain to you how eating carbohydrates and how this can affect and hopefully help you with your weight loss. So if you've ever been to any sort of event, they will have crackers, meat, and cheese. Okay, so crackers are a carbohydrate, meat is a protein, and cheese is a fat. Okay, so when we put other things with carbohydrates, it actually slows down or lowers that glycemic index. If you've ever seen like crackers with meat, that's going to add protein, so it's going to slow down that process of blood glucose. It's just the digestion. So when we're adding more nutrients to these carbohydrates, it slows down or lowers that glycemic index. But when these carbohydrates are very stripped of nutrients, think about like flour. It's super processed. It's just carbs. Like anything that's going to be in the breakfast counter, it's going to be ultra processed. It's going to be low nutrient level, very quick, very blood glucose elevating. Right? But something that's going to be a little bit more rich in nutrients, think about fruit, think about vegetables. These are very low glycemic carbohydrates. These are going to be easy for you to eat throughout the day for just a little bit of energy. Now, a lot of fruits get dried, or people will dry these fruits. Dried fruits have a higher sugar content per fiber content. Sugar to fiber ratio, right? You're drying out all of the water, so that's going to help you deliver these nutrients to the bloodstream, and it's just sugar. So these are going to be high. Anything dried has higher glycemic. So if you take a banana, for instance, I'm not even sure. I should have looked this up. Should have done my research, but I didn't. A banana is going to be a lower glycemic carbohydrate. However, if you dehydrate it, it's going to be a very high glycemic carbohydrate. Basically turns it into candy. So dried fruits, not necessarily better. But if you put these dried fruits with cheese, you have a dried something with cheese, you're going to essentially lower the time that it takes to get into that bloodstream. So how we eat these carbohydrates is important, and that's why I follow a very, very helpful tool that I was taught by celebrity nutritionist Mark McDonald that is called the protein, fat, and carb rules, the PFC model. Now, if we're eating protein, fats, and carbs at every meal, we are significantly lowering the insulin response all the time. So is going to help you regulate that blood glucose while also maintaining healthy insulin levels that will help you keep the weight off. Now, the last thing that I'm going to talk about, and this is just mostly a mindset thing, is the fact that carbohydrates retain water. And I want you to think about this as the buddy system, okay? So for 1 gram of carbohydrate, you are going to have 1 gram or 4 grams of water retention. So 1 to 4. This is our buddy system. So for 1 gram of carbohydrate, 4 grams of water are going to be retained in the body. This is not fat, okay? But think about how much water weighs, okay? You have an empty water bottle, super light. You fill that up, it becomes heavy. So think about water retention. Carbohydrates are good. You need them to have energy, available energy, just point blank period. Once you understand the concepts that we talked about, 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive, pushing that insulin button, keeping protein, fats, and carbs in balance. Once we think about those things, we're able to really make large strides in cutting down excess body fat storage. Also, by keeping those insulin levels at bay, we're not storing excess fat. So when we get into exercise and when we go to exercise 6 days a week, we're doing something intentional about exercise. We're tapping into those fat stores, not just calories burned, tapping into actually stored fat for energy. You are going to be able to make huge progress in the gym. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, or you would simply like to get on the call with me and just go over what you're doing, see if it's a good plan, comment below. Don't forget to like this video for more content like this. Subscribe. I will be posting hopefully pretty regularly. I will get on a posting schedule here soon, but I'm new to Instagram, or I'm new to YouTube, so I really appreciate you taking the time with me to talk about this today, and I hope that you have a great day. Smile, and don't forget to have fun.